Caviar, from Russian royalty to gourmet delicacy. Caviar, the salted roe of sturgeon, is one of the world's most prized and luxurious delicacies. With a history that spans centuries, caviar has transitioned from being a staple of Russian royalty to becoming a global gourmet food enjoyed by connoisseurs across the globe. The journey of caviar from the Caspian and Black Seas to elegant dining tables worldwide is one marked by tradition, political shifts, and evolving culinary tastes. To understand the prestige of caviar today, it's essential to trace its roots, the economic and cultural forces that shaped its distribution, and its place in contemporary cuisine. The history of caviar is deeply intertwined with the Caspian Sea, a body of water bordered by modern-day Russia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan. The Caspian Sea is home to several species of sturgeon, the prehistoric fish from which caviar is harvested. Sturgeon have existed for over 250 million years, making them one of the oldest fish species still alive today. The roe of these fish became known as caviar, a term derived from the Persian word caviar, meaning egg-bearing. The earliest known consumption of caviar dates back to ancient Persia, where fishermen would consume the roe as a source of sustenance. The Persians believed in the roe's health benefits, particularly its ability to increase strength and stamina. However, it was not until much later that caviar began to be considered a luxury item, associated with wealth, royalty, and high society. Caviar's elevation to royal status is closely associated with Russia, particularly during the era of the Tsars. As early as the 12th century, Russian aristocrats were consuming sturgeon roe, but it was during the reign of Ivan the Terrible in the 16th century that caviar started to gain prominence in Russian court life. The abundance of sturgeon in Russian rivers, particularly the Volga, made the roe accessible to the nobility and the royal family. Ivan the Terrible is credited with serving caviar at royal banquets, where it became a staple of Russian elite cuisine. By the 17th century, caviar's reputation had spread beyond Russia's borders. Peter the Great, who sought to modernize Russia by adopting Western European customs, played a pivotal role in introducing caviar to European courts. As a result, caviar began to be served at diplomatic events and state functions, solidifying its status as a symbol of luxury. European royals, particularly in France and Germany, developed a taste for this delicacy, associating it with the exotic and opulent culture of the Russian Empire. During the 19th century, Russian caviar reached the height of its prestige as it was exported to Europe and beyond. The Russian aristocracy, known for their extravagant banquets, often featured caviar as a delicacy alongside other gourmet foods. At the same time, Russian Orthodox clergy would consume caviar during religious fasts, as fish products were permissible when meat was forbidden. This religious connection further cemented caviar's place in Russian culture and its association with high status. Caviar's journey to America began in the late 19th century, when sturgeon were discovered in abundance along the Atlantic coast and in rivers like the Delaware and Hudson. German immigrants, who were familiar with caviar production, saw an opportunity to establish a caviar industry in the United States. By the late 1800s, the US had become the world's largest producer of caviar, with sturgeon roe being harvested in massive quantities. However, the initial reception of caviar in America was quite different from that in Europe and Russia. Caviar was so plentiful in the US that it was not considered a luxury. Rather, it was served as a free snack in bars to encourage patrons to drink more. American sturgeon caviar was often considered inferior to its Russian counterpart, though it was widely available and inexpensive. It was only later, as sturgeon populations dwindled and caviar became scarcer, that the roe gained its status as a gourmet food in the US. The depletion of sturgeon stocks in America and the enforcement of stricter fishing regulations in the early 20th century contributed to the rising price and exclusivity of caviar. By the mid-20th century, caviar had transformed from a common bar snack into a coveted delicacy in American fine dining, often associated with wealth, sophistication, and gourmet culture. While caviar's association with royalty and luxury continued, the political and economic upheavals of the 20th century, particularly the Russian Revolution and the rise of the Soviet Union, significantly impacted its production and distribution. During the Soviet era, the government nationalized the sturgeon fisheries in the Caspian Sea, placing them under state control. Caviar became one of the Soviet Union's most valuable exports, contributing significantly to the national economy. At the same time, caviar became more difficult to obtain for the average Russian citizen due to the controlled production and export focus. Nevertheless, it remained a cherished food, particularly during holidays and celebrations like New Year's Eve. Soviet caviar brands like Beluga and Osetra became known internationally, cementing Russia's reputation as the premier producer of the world's finest caviar. These environmental concerns have led to a rise in sustainable caviar farming, with aquaculture facilities emerging in countries like France, Italy, China, and the United States. By farming sturgeon in controlled environments, producers have been able to meet the growing global demand for caviar while helping to preserve wild sturgeon populations. As a result, caviar production has become more diverse, with various countries now producing high-quality caviar that competes with traditional Caspian Sea varieties. In the globalized world, caviar has maintained its image as a symbol of luxury and exclusivity. It is a frequent feature in Michelin-starred restaurants and high-end gourmet stores. Today, the finest caviar can cost thousands of dollars per kilogram, particularly for rare varieties like Beluga or the albino golden caviar from Alma sturgeon. The culinary world continues to experiment with caviar, using it in innovative dishes, from sushi to molecular gastronomy. The history of caviar is a tale of transformation, from a humble food consumed by ancient fishermen to one of the most prestigious and sought-after delicacies in the world. From the shores of the Caspian Sea to the royal courts of Europe, and eventually to gourmet tables worldwide, caviar's journey is steeped in tradition, luxury, and the forces of supply and demand. Despite environmental challenges and shifting economic landscapes, caviar remains a symbol of elegance and indulgence, embodying centuries of cultural and culinary history. As sustainable farming practices continue to evolve, caviar's future may be just as fascinating as its past, ensuring that this storied delicacy continues to captivate palates for generations to come.